Good evening. Good evening. What a privilege it is to stand here once more in this marvelous ballroom, in this magnificent hotel, in this, our magical city, and to share it with all of you. And what an honor, what a joy it is to stand here at such a stunning moment in the LGBT movement. The year since we last gathered has been astonishing. Marriage equality in New York. An excellent chance of our winning marriage at the ballot box in not just one, but maybe two, perhaps even 3 states in November. Public opinion tipping ever further towards acceptance. Challenges to DOMA and Prop 8 at the very door of the Supreme Court. Members of the armed forces just this past June marching openly in pride parades. And big public comings out by figures like Frank Ocean and Anderson Cooper and Sally Ride. Comings out that were so visible that they rated headlines across the country, but then they were so unremarkable that very quickly they began to fade away from those same headlines. Thank you to the shushers. Progress like this, my friends, it happens for reasons. Freedom rarely comes for free, nor does it come about by accident or because of the workings of some grand historical inevitability. No, we move ahead. We move ahead by little steps and by leaps for reasons. We move ahead because of leaders like Kate Kendall and Barney Frank. We move ahead because of people like all of you in this room, people without whom there wouldn't be an LGBT movement in the first place. And we move ahead because of the work, the incredible hard work of the nonprofit organizations that work for us, that advocate on our behalf and that take care of our people. Organizations like NCLR, organizations like Tracone and the Transgender Law Center, Open House and Open Hand, the National Center for Lesbian Rights, as I said, Names Project, the New Conservatory Theater Project, Somos Familia, the San Francisco AIDS Foundation, the API Wellness Center, Rainbow Community Center, QuackMap, Lyric, Song Thought Radio, and the list can go on. We all know that there are many, many organizations that are doing incredible work in our community. But the ones that I just mentioned, they share something in common. In their very earliest days, Horizons Foundation gave each one of them critical early support. And in most cases, Horizons grant was the very first grant that they received from anywhere. A few weeks ago, I found myself at the offices of one of these organizations, the Transgender Law Center. The occasion was a site visit, a visit from the representatives of one of the 10 largest foundations in the country. And the staff from this foundation had come to check on the progress that the organization was making with a significant grant they'd made to promote transgender health. And my friends, I was so proud. I was proud, first and foremost, of the Transgender Law Center. And their executive director, Mason Davis, who is here, I would like to salute. I was proud of TLC for reaching a point after only 10 years that a foundation like this would make such an investment in them. And I was proud of all the good that this money was going to do here on the ground in the Bay Area for some of the most vulnerable people in our community. And I was proud because Horizons Foundation had made a grant to TLC in TLC's very first year. And over its first decade, it was Horizons Foundation that made more grants to TLC than any other single foundation. Now let me be clear. The credit here goes to Mason and all the folks at the Transgender Law Center. But I hope that you share the pride that I mentioned, because it is your gifts, and your support over the years that made possible our investment in TLC. And it's your gifts and your support today, your gifts tonight, the ones you were just making, that enable us to make investments in the NCLRs and the TLCs of tomorrow. You know, progress in our movement, the pace of change, it can just seem dizzying these days. It's like change is just hurtling forward. And perhaps that's especially so in this blessed Bay Area bubble of ours, where at least at some times and in some places, it can feel as though freedom, equality, and dignity belong to us every bit as much as they do to non-LGBT people. In fact, things are changing so quickly that sometimes I hear people say that very soon our struggle will be over, and even that our community itself will soon fade away in some kind of haze of apathy and assimilation. Now, none of us here, even the professional homosexuals in the room, like me and Kate and Chuck and a few other people, none of us can predict with certainty, well, maybe Kate can, but none of us can predict with certainty the future path of our community. But there are two things that I do know. First, make no mistake, we will win our struggle for equality. And second, our community is not about to fade away. We're really not just going through a phase here. For starters, there's simply far too much injustice still out there. Across the globe, every day, LGBT people are harassed, silenced, they're jailed, they're assaulted. Half of this country's LGBT population benefits from precisely zero protection from discrimination. A young African-American gay man has a 1 in 2 chance of becoming HIV positive. 14 years to the day, or to the night. It was October 6th, 1998. 14 years to the night since Matthew Shepard was left to die on a Wyoming fence. And just a few days more than 10 years past the night when Gwen Araujo was murdered across the bay in the town of Newark, California. After all those years, hate crimes against us still number in the thousands. And last year, right here in San Francisco, God's sake, in our own San Francisco Unified School District, nearly 1,000 young LGBTQ-identified young people tried to take their own lives. So yes, we can be absolutely proud of all of our accomplishments and thrilled by our progress. But we are not done. And we won't be done so long as a single queer student in a single school on a single day has to learn in fear. We won't be done so long as discrimination costs anyone, anywhere, anytime, their home or a job, their health care or their kids. We won't be done until it would be unthinkable that a serious candidate for public office would embrace anything less than our full equality. We won't be done until the world embraces the LGBT rights as human rights, until closets hold only clothes, until hate crimes exist only as horror stories in history books, and we all can marry whom we love. And even then, we may be a little tired, but we won't be done. And we won't be done because we are linked by more than our common enemies, by more than just adversity alone. For this movement, our movement, must never be defined only by what we're against, but also by what we are for. Let's always remember that our movement is part of a great human movement, a movement for equality and for justice, a movement for life and for love, for truth over falsehood, for hope over hatred, and for simple human dignity over hurt and humiliation. Ours must be a movement that aims at more than simply winning some kind of formal legal equality. It's a movement that has to look past improving only our own lives. No, ours must be a movement that aims at building a better world, a forever changed and better world for those who come after. One sure hallmark of a great community, a truly great community, is that it endures. It endures, of course, through its culture, through its traditions and its stories. It also endures through how it plans for and provides for generations that come after. And that is why Horizons Foundation is so fiercely dedicated to building the LGBT Community Endowment Fund. Which brings me in turn to a man named Joe. Joe was about as gracious and humble a human being as ever walked the streets of San Francisco. And when Joe passed away earlier this year at the age of 83, he left his community an incredible gift. A gift that will total somewhere exceeding $2 million that will soon go into the LGBT Community Endowment Fund. And there, in the endowment fund, together with dozens of other legacy gifts, what will in time be hundreds, no thousands of gifts, gifts of all sizes, Joe's generosity will ensure that future generations of LGBT people are free, once and forever free, to live, to work, and to love. Built by Joe, and built by you and by me, from gifts from our estates, be they great or be they small. Built by thousands for the benefit of millions, the endowment will be a great gift to future generations, an achievement that will stand as a symbol of pride, power, and hope for LGBT people both here and far, far beyond. And yes, that will be forever. Earlier this year, I had the once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to go on a trek in the Mount Everest region in Nepal. As you might imagine, it was amazing. It was glorious. There were swinging footbridges over crashing rivers, prayer flags blowing in the wind, great shaggy yaks, mountains that were just reaching up to the sky. The trek was one other thing as well, I have to admit. The trek was hard. Appearances notwithstanding, I'm not 21 anymore. And even then, if I were 21, trekking towards Everest isn't just a matter of going steadily up and up and up. Instead, it's also about descending what feel like an endless series of mountain saddles and steep valleys that you then have to climb back up the other side. So the trail is like up and down and up and down and then up and up. And a brief confession, even though I am one of those professional homosexuals, I didn't spend a lot of time on those 10 days thinking about the LGBT movement. And yet, as I walked on, it came to me that being on the trek was more than a little bit like being a part of this movement. It's a very long trail we're on, my friends. And there are moments when it can feel like we're moving backwards, or that we're descending rather than ascending, or that instead of following clear lines, the trail twists and winds, or the air is too thin, the wind too strong, or the mountain is simply too high. And yet, up we go, step by step. At those moments when we find ourselves doubting that we've made any progress, that we've really gone anywhere at all, we can turn and we can look back, and we can see how very, very far it is that we've come. And we can look ahead. We can look ahead to the shining peaks that mark our destination, peaks with names like justice, dignity, and freedom, peaks that we haven't climbed yet, but surely, someday we will. There's one last thing about trekking I want to share. You don't do it alone. Somebody else built those trails. Maybe somebody helps carry your pack. A guide keeps you from walking into a crevasse and keeps you on the trail. None of us do this alone either. It takes all of us, the donors and the doers, the activists, the artists and the allies, the volunteers and the visionaries, the leaders and the litigants, those in suits and those in the streets. And it takes you, every one of you. Progress happens for reasons. You are one of those reasons. And I thank you. For every time you've given, thank you. For every time you've given again, thank you. For every time you've raised a protest sign, or you've voted, or you've phone banked, or you've knocked on doors, every time that you've chosen hope over cynicism, commitment over complacence, standing up instead of standing aside, thank you. And for every time Every time that you remember and honor those who have gone before us, and every time you plan and provide for the generations that follow, and for everything you've done or you will do for the dignity and freedom of people everywhere, of all people everywhere, and for your presence here tonight. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.